The poor folk roams the path of the white road. The white road leads to a mountain from which a river flows, and the river leads to more white roads. Atop the mountain there is a frog, and once the princess kisses it, she too becomes a frog. Above the mountains and the rivers and the white roads there is the blessed sun, which stands windless and tranquil. The poor folk roams the lonely road but never meets the top of the mountain. He walks to no avail, and he doesn't realize that the sun has not gone down. The treachery of images which surrounds his feeble mind is all he sees, and the sun, at second glance, watches nobody but him. The poor folk is not alone. The poor folk is not foolish. But the other men, the poor men are, says the sage calmly to his student. But you imply that the poor folk sees the world incorrectly, don't you? But why isn't it that the poor folk is the only one that is truly sane? Only the poor folk is unaffected by the turmoil of life and the omnipresence of the sun. It is only a reasonable outcome for the poor folk not to see through the veil of illusion. Or the poor folk is not ignorant. Rather he, the poor folk, does not break because he does not perceive everything. And you claim that those surrounding the poor folk are fools. But if they're all trapped in the land of blue skies, white roads, mountains, and rivers, then wisdom and foolishness become indistinguishable from the outside world, replies the student in his rebellious voice. The sun, my friend, is but a metaphor, and your voice is eager to fight, and so you saw right through what I was saying. You see, the poor folk lives in illusion. He sees not further than the tip of his very own nose, and yet he feels as he is above those who walk in line with him. And it is only from the grand view of the sun that you see that they are anything but different. And oh, the sun's wanderlust for greed, it rules for pleasure, by which it ignores the life of the men beneath it. And the poor folk roams his white road which leads to nothing more than white roads. He does not see what is above his very own head. So you, my friend, and I are in fact the poor folk, responds the sage. You assume intentionally a will to dominate from the sun. But what if it is us that projects rule onto the sun? The world does not require malicious intent to entrap people. It is the need to satiate that lures the mouse into the mousetrap. If you say that the sun is a tyrant, and you, my friend, do so out of the need to point fingers. It is easier to fight an enemy than to confront entropy. So then the sun is simply meaningless, which means that the poor folk is no less oppressed than the sun itself. And you claim that the poor folk thinks that he is above those who surround him. But who isn't to say that from our external view and your ambiguous depictions, he simply sees those around him as people who he cannot reach? It is in isolation that the human body begins to deteriorate, but arrogance only fuels the flame that is ego. So the self may well only be harming itself by stepping forth into the blinding light of loneliness. And you say that we all are the poor folk, but by that criteria, no one is expected to scale the mountain. No one is expected to question the sun. So it is out of the need to blame, so you blame the world for your issues. It is not me who is decayed, but the world you boast so joyfully. So it is resignation that you are faced with, my friend, lectures the student while his face visibly begins to turn red and his flailing of the arms grows hostile. Well, the sun brings comfort. Its warm light hits the coarse and callous skin of the poor folk, but eventually the heat causes sunburns. You, my friend, have once again misinterpreted the message. You were too caught up proving your point that you are unable to focus your mind on what is important. Look around you and you will notice the sun, the white roads, the blue skies, and the green fields. I am but a poor folk. You and I are part of the metaphor which I envision. It is to say that I play my humble role of philosopher by which I question all that surrounds me. So it is the action of looking up that differentiates me from the other poor folk. Remember that I am Russian, my friend. Remember that those people under the golden rays of the sun seem to be unable to reach the sun. And those atop the mountains are too deceived. They feel as if they are closer to the roaring flames that they so desperately desire. But that too means that they will burn the fastest. By choice it would be nighttime, but the tales which the sun tells us of the night scares the fools away. I do not fear crossing the gaze of those pale eyes which strive for power. I fear not looking at the horror of its terrible face, and you are indeed correct. I am faced with a trembling confession that I have no option but to resign. I do not have the power to single-handedly alter this reality. I keep hope in the society of the greater good, but the present is bleak, and I mow at the sight of my relatives becoming servants of the sun. You see, they simply do not believe the tyranny, and it is hope that keeps me buoyant. The gnashing of the teeth is not necessary. It is only a matter of time before we all suffer the inevitable conclusion of the sun's undisputed reign. The rat may willingly step into the trap if it requires food, but that may take time, so instead they burn the crops and purge the lands, so the rat must satiate from one place only. That is the trap, cries the sage while gazing at the landscape ahead of him. Seeing the sun makes you no better than others under its reign. Every poor folk claims his suffering is more vibrant than everyone else's, and every wanderer thinks that others are dreaming while they are alert. So you are not superior to the poor folk. You are imitating the action of the tiger, but you live in its shadow. You claim to be beneath those around you, but that is under the veil of affirmation. You are stating that you are wise enough to recognize your inferiority to the authoritarian state we live in. Therefore, you feel that you are unlike them. You are placing yourself in the isolation, which is why you feel so highly of yourself. It is the pride of ascetic. You are not humbling yourself, my friend. You are not at all. You, by gazing at the sun, are inadvertently blinding yourself in the process. But nevertheless, you are right that the poor folk may seek shelter from the light of the sun which covers the glow of the stars, all the other stars which we poor folk do not see. Sighs the student as the sage begins to weep.